everybody. I'm Adam Smolensky, and I lead the user experience research team. I'm looking forward to answering any questions that anyone has about our team, the work we recently completed, and the projects we're currently working on now, which are both in the deck that was shared earlier. So I'm looking at the agenda, and I don't see any questions just yet, but we're going to wait until there's at least one question.
Hey, Adam. Thanks for the deck. Are we allocating our UX research efforts according to predicted GMAO, like the things that we know a lot of people use? And if so, how do we do that?
It's a great question, Sid. I think that we are staffed that way, and Christy can jump in to add a little bit more facts around this. But I'm not quite entirely sure if we're spending our efforts around those most used areas. Christy, I was wondering if you had any insight around that.
Yeah, so what I would say is we can't research everything, and we know that, and we shouldn't research everything. So what we rely on is working with the product directors in each section to help us understand what are the most important things to understand for that particular section. And that's really where the UX researchers should be focused, is on those bigger, more meaningful, more valuable studies. Other studies can happen too, because designers can do research and PMs can do research. So things that maybe aren't as impactful do, also get covered, but not by our research resources. I would say the product directors do a pretty good job of helping to make sure that that happens. So you'll see, for example, in ops, Lori and Andre are the researchers in that department, and they are focused on the CI adoption journey, which is a really meaningful study. Similarly, Catherine and Anne are in dev. And so these are to Adam's point, these are our most highly used areas, and they are the areas that have 2 researchers on them. But you see Catherine really focused on things like code review, which is really, really important. So TLDR, are we doing like a one-to-one? GMAO is high in this particular stage, so we're just focused on this stage? No, but are we trying to surface the things that are most valuable to the company and the company's revenue and our product usage? Yes. Does that help, Sid?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. John, it looks like you have the next question, if you don't mind verbalizing.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, how much do we incorporate like feedback that we get on issues into our UX research efforts?
Just to be clear, you're talking about
I guess so. So what I'll share is, a lot of times I'm on the community team at GitLab, and a lot of times folks from like research will reach out to me and say, "Hey, we'd love to get community feedback on X, Y, and Z." And as far as I know, in addition to the kind of community members that I'm in regular contact with, we also have a much larger community who are actively commenting on these issues, and clearly those users are passionate if they're taking time to go and leave a comment on one of our open issues. So I'm wondering, like, do we use that as a source of information for our research in addition to like proactively reaching out to people and doing interviews and that kind of thing?
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. We do. It's not every single project though, but I know that we do actively incorporate that into some of the feedback in the work that we do and consider that as a data source when applicable. I'll ask anyone on the team, on the research team, if they happen to have any examples around doing that.
Sure. And I can provide a link after kind of talking about it, but I find it really valuable, especially for the areas around dev, because we have lots of feedback related to code review, just even merge request design, things like that, issue boards. So what I often do is when I get a new research project, what I'll do is go into the issue tracker, kind of look for related issues, and then read the feedback on there. And it's important to read it and not just kind of take every single comment, because some comments don't really describe the why. They don't describe why it's a pain point. It's more of a +1. So what I like to do is take all the comments, see which ones provided a use case, and that oftentimes for me is like a direct thing that would support either a question I want to dig into deeper, or it's like a data point for me supporting something I'd already found throughout previous research. So it's really helpful. I'm not sure if we do it for every single project, but I definitely have a couple examples I can share.
Yeah, I feel like that's an opportunity, like where our transparency gives us a unique kind of source of information from our community that a lot of other companies don't have. So cool to see that we're taking advantage of that.
Thank you both. Sid, you're up next.
Yeah. It's a really tough question, but I learned to ask tough questions that are maybe unanswerable. How can we get the stages per user from the current value of less than 1.5 to our target of 1.8? And for context, for everyone else, like stages per user, we know that if we add another stage, conversion triples. So people appreciate the product a lot more. So it's a super important value, and it hasn't really moved much. So I wonder how we can get it to move.
That is a tough question. I don't have an immediate answer for you on that. Although, Jeff, I hate to put you on the spot. I was wondering if your team has been looking into that metric at all.
I mean, growth as a section really looks into that metric in many different ways. I don't know if I have a clear answer. Something we've been seeing in talking to users and in data and just in general is actually in some ways less is more. That we have this problem of GitLab does so many things, and that initial entry into GitLab can be sometimes somewhat overwhelming, that you face this sort of paralysis of choice problem of faced with the possibilities of going into 20 different areas, probably more than 20. Sometimes people don't know where to start. And so I think we've been thinking about onboarding as a way to try to counteract that. I just saw this morning, Sam, who is one of our PMs, just posted the results of one of the experiments we've done related to onboarding, where we kind of directly put people into an onboarding experience, and actually trial to conversion went up quite a bit, and stage usage, multiple stage usage went up quite a bit. I think he said 20%, though I need to go look at the message. So I think that's one way is kind of getting people to those areas of the product we feel are most appropriate for new users. And then I think personally, the next phase of that is for people who maybe are not new users in terms of using Git or using DevOps tooling, the appropriate stages for them in their context, because we know everyone's a little different and everyone's situation is a little different. And so how can we try to understand what stages are appropriate for a given user and most quickly sort of prove value in those areas?
Thanks. Yeah, I think onboarding certainly helps. I think there's more that we can do. For example, when you went to issue boards for the first time, it first prompted you, do you want to create additional swim lanes? And the second prompt is, do you want to upgrade to a paid subscription? Even though that was like my first time checking out issue boards, like I just want to see what this is about. I don't want to create swim lanes. I don't even know what those are. Like, stop asking me questions and give me some usability. Also, like our homepage says we have error tracking, but it doesn't work. You have to install Sentry. So people don't use it. So we should probably make sure it works out of the box by default without any additional work. So working by default is something you'll hear me talk more about, but that is orthogonal to a great onboarding. I'm glad to hear that we're working on that, and glad to hear that that's working.
Thank you, Sid and Jeff, for that. Any other questions?
Can we do some research around that? Like, is stuff working by default in GitLab, or like how can we increase the number of stages per user apart from better onboarding?
I mean, I think in growth, and I think a lot of researchers in all the other areas could talk about their own efforts as well. I mean, we've just reorganized the teams where two of the teams are focused on specifically adoption of Create and adoption of Verify. And I think now that we've gotten those as our focus areas, we're going to be spending a lot of time kind of getting into exactly what you're talking about, that new user experience. And when I say adoption, that's first 90 days adoption. So for people first jumping into Create or Verify, are they working by default? When people are first entering those experiences, are they able to quickly get up and running? If not, what issues or UX problems can we identify and try to improve, purely through the lens of trying to get someone sort of successful and confident as quickly as possible.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, Jeff, I see on slide 9 that you're actually studying right now, why do users use GitLab without using Create, which seems like it's very closely tied to this. I mean, Create is it's kind of core to why people might use GitLab. So is this kind of your team's first foray into really better understanding this?
I mean, that's focused specifically on Mike, the PM, wants to better understand because he's seen through data, and we've also seen through some other studies that people who don't use Create, and we believe in some cases that may be due to usability challenges or problems just understanding our own product. But what we also want to understand is, do people have valid reasons for not using our Create product? We just had a customer call with a customer who was trialing our SaaS product who didn't end up going with us. And they were not going to use our Create solution because basically for them, moving off of GitHub would have introduced a whole range of complexities and issues they would have had to resolve. And so they, from the very beginning, wanted to integrate and basically try to keep their source code on GitHub while utilizing us for a variety of other features. And they found that to be a challenging process. They found the documentation to be a bit lacking. They found they couldn't get the mirroring to work like they needed it to. And so there were other issues as well. And that was really sort of the decision factor for them when it came to that trial. They said, we can't get this working. This is sort of a core prerequisite for us. We're not going to continue down this path. And so things like that have really sparked us to want to better understand, for people that, for good reasons or not, want to use a different Create solution, how are we facilitating that? And are there areas that could be improved? We also feel like if you can allow people to continue using their own Create solution, that gives people sort of a comfort or a sense of not having such a dramatic shift. We hear people talk about, oh, I'm gonna have to migrate 1,000 repositories. And that introduces stress and that introduces anxiety. And so if people can continue to keep their repositories in their existing solution and not have to, undertake such a dramatic migration while continuing to use GitLab and learn GitLab and see value in GitLab, we feel that could be a benefit as well. Because sometimes people, they don't want to take the leap, if you will.
Thanks, Jeff.
Are there any other questions? Well, if there are not any additional questions, then we will end the meeting. So thank you very much.